and welcome to today's video. Now today I'm going to go through something really exciting because Anthropic, who make Claude, have announced two really great developments. The first one is that they've released Claude 2. Now Claude 2 is the latest version of their main model. Now for those who don't know, Claude have their instant model, which is very similar to GPT 3.5, and they've got their full model, which is their answer to GPT 4. And their full models have been updated, and they believe that it has made some massive increases in terms of reasoning and the ability to do difficult tasks. And that is really exciting for anyone who wants to use it as an alternative to GPT-4. And there is one really important reason why you may want to use Claude as an alternative, which we will go through in this video. The second development is that anyone who is in the UK or US can now access their new front end to Claude. Their front end to Claude is basically their access to Chat-GPT. And what it is a chat interface that you can go in and you can speak to it and get answers straight away, same as you would do if you wanted to go to ChatGPT right now. And that's exciting because Claude is a really good large language model. And in terms of the alternative that it offers to GPT-4 is their ability to take in large documents. And that will go through in this video because for those of you who have certain tasks that GPT-4 just cannot do because of the context window, Claude is absolutely the answer for you. But is it up to speed with GPT-4 and is it going to overtake it? Well, the jury's still out on that, but we'll go through that in this video because in the last few months I have noticed people coming to the channel and saying that I didn't show Claude really enough justice in that video. I didn't do it enough of a service in when I showed it off. Now, the reason for that is that that video was created when Claude first came out. The reason why people might want to use Claude now wasn't even a part of it back then. When I was using it at that time, there was nothing that set it apart from GPT-4 or Bard. It didn't do anything different, but now that is completely not the case. I've had access to Claude for quite some time, and there are certain cases where I will go into Claude and I will make use of it because I cannot get what I want from another large language model. And that is a really useful case for those of you out there who maybe are struggling in some ways right now, and we'll go through that in this video. So what I'm going to do first is show you how you get access to Claude now, and also what you will do when you go onto it, how you will use it, because it is a bit different to GPT-4 and a bit different to ChatGPT as a whole. For those of you who aren't in the UK or the US, you can still use Claude, but you will need to use a third party. I do recommend Riku. It is a really great service, and you can use Claude on there now free of charge, and I would absolutely recommend if you aren't in the UK or US, get over there, get signed up. It is really useful. I've got a link in the description. You get 5 days free of charge when you sign up. If you need a bit more convincing, watch my video. I'll go through a full demonstration of what it can do so you can see what is possible to do for you, because not only can you create your own inbuilt services within Riku and use these platforms, you can also release your own products built directly within that platform itself. So give that a try. That said, let's move on to the video and let's move on to looking at Claude. Hello, so this is how you start to use Claude if you're in the UK or US. You head over to Claude.ai, pop your email in or use Continue with Google, and you'll be able to sign up and start using it straight away. As it states, it's in open beta, so it's very similar to the free research preview that was used by ChatGPT. And again, it is going to be improving over time, but there will also be, similar to ChatGPT, sometimes where they will limit usage of it. So again, like the free research preview on ChatGPT, you start to get points where it got overloaded. And at the moment, you still only have 25 uses of GPT-4 every single 3 hours. So this may be the same sort of thing that comes in on Claude if it starts to take off. As it says further down the page, you get more information on what Claude is and how it works. You can sign up to the API access, get access to the console, which if you check my previous video, you can see how the console works. And you can also read about the constitutional AI, which is their way of training a large language model, which is in contrast to the way that the other large language models are trained. The whole point of this is they give the AI a set of principles and then they let it train itself. It isn't a human feedback as ChatGPT does. It's a different way of trying to do it. Which way is going to work out best? Who knows? At the moment, it's worthwhile comparing the two and seeing where you think it is. But I think general consensus is at this minute in time that GPT-4 is far ahead, and that may be down to the training, but it's also more than likely down to the human feedback as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Claude can catch up with their way of training their service. Now, if we go into the main chat interface, we'll look at how the new Claude front end works so you can see how it's going to work when you start to use it. So when you log into Claude, this is the screen you'll come to. This screen here is all your previous chats. What I really like about this, and I do really like it, is that you're able to go straight back into a previous chat and pick up from where you were, which is great, but you're also able to search for your chats as well. And this is useful. I don't know about you, but there's so many times that I've gone to ChatGPT and thought, right, there's a chat I had a few days ago, there's something in there I really need. So I'm going to go back and get it, or there's a prompt that I really like from about 20 or 30 chats ago. I'm going to go back and get it and use it again now. And then I can't find it because I'm having to scroll through and scroll through. I can't remember what ChatGPT has named it. I can't remember when exactly I did it. And this fixes it. So when you have a chat with Claude, you can rename the chat. So again, that's really useful if you are using it for a specific purpose and you rename that chat so you can find it later. And then when you come back later on, maybe a week or so later, you think, right, that blog one that I used the other day, that was really useful. Right, there we go, I found it. It's there. And you can start and pick back up from it or just go back in, copy the prompt and take it into a new chat. I think that's really useful. OpenAI, get this added into ChatGPT as well because it is a great feature. The other thing you can do on here as well is you can click on here and upload up to 5 files. And these can be used kind of as a knowledge base for it. This is really useful because there are not many easy ways to be able to do this. You can't do this in ChatGPT. You can start to upload files to the code interpreter just for code purposes, but you can't upload a file and chat with that within ChatGPT itself. And this fixes that problem. You upload those files, you can chat with them, and Claude has 100,000 token context window. That's around 75,000 words. So if you think about the average books that are out there, there are books that are around 50,000 words, a lot of textbooks that are less than that. You can upload those on here and have a nice little chat with it. And that could be really useful for a whole load of purposes when it comes to learning or when it comes to using it as a way of being able to guide the conversations that you're having. Claude, I think there has added something that is incredibly useful. You can do that at the moment using LangChain and getting into the code, but this is a very simple, get into a chat, get started, really, really useful. And we're going to test that out in a minute on here as well. The other thing I've been testing on here, if you can see on here, these are all coded tasks that I've got on here. Since Claude 2 came out, one of the things it spoke about having improvements in is reasoning and code. And I think that GPT-4 is incredibly useful for when you're starting a new project, you need to get a lot of code written quickly just to get it up and running. And there's a lot of things that you already know how to do, but you don't want to take the time to type them out. You just want to test them out and then refine them yourself later on. GPT-4 is great for that. And especially now with Code Interpreter with Python, it is unbelievable for it. I don't expect Claude to be up to the level of Code Interpreter because it hasn't been created just for that purpose, as Code Interpreter has. But I was hoping that it would be a bit closer to the level of GPT-4 in terms of being able to scan through for syntax errors, scan through for logic errors, scan through for things like that, or very quickly being able to write a new class and get that set up in there very quickly. When I've looked at it, it really currently doesn't match up to it. So I was trying to do here where it would take an XML feed, it would then basically go through it and pull out the information that I needed. I already had something that did this, but I wanted to see if it could match it. GPT-4 very quickly, got it up and running very quickly on there. Claude didn't really do it. And again, with this here, the actual size of the XML feed that I was looking at was a really big feed. So Claude would be perfect for it because it could take the whole feed in, while GPT-4 within the limitations of the ChatGPT interface wouldn't take it in, but it just wasn't able to do it. And that, I think, it does show that it is still quite a way away from GPT-4 for that purpose, but it is getting there. Some of the things in here it was able to do very easily, and for someone who maybe doesn't want to pay for the ChatGPT itself or doesn't want to or runs out of the 25 uses in the middle of something, it could be useful for it, but it just really isn't up to scratch yet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a test of uploading some files and seeing how that works. So this, I think, is one of the main use cases that you might find really useful that you currently can't do on ChatGPT or can't do on things like that. So let's give it a try. So as you can see now, there's a document uploaded which is about Middlesbrough Football Club's last season with information taken from Wikipedia. I've also tested it twice. The reason I've done that is that I started recording the first time and I somehow managed to upload a blank document. So I had to test that it was definitely working before I actually ran it for you. So what we're just going to do is have a look at what Middlesbrough's last season was like. When we did the first tests on Claude, Bard and ChatGPT before, this was the sort of thing we did to have a look at how accurate they all were. And this will allow us to see what it's going to do. So we'll take a look at the information from the document. And what it's going to do is it's going to take the information of the document and write the information based on that. Now think about what that can do for you. If you take any document and you put it into Claude, you can get full summaries of it. Now, of course, that has to be based on the size of the document, has to be based on the amount of tokens that are in it as well. But if we take a look on here, this is all things that happened recently. So again, they reached fourth in the championship, exactly right. Third round of the first round of the clubs, exactly right. Akman was a top scorer with 29 goals, exactly right. Character call for in October after Wilder was sacked, exactly right. All this information in here is really, really good because again, that has full information on what's happened in that season straight from that document. Now, what we can do from here is now it's going to do outline a blog post, and it's only going to take the information from there. And that is something that you can't really do in other things. You can copy the information into it, but in here, you can have a document that is 50,000 words long and have it do this. You can do this by using something like using LangChain to be able to get a vector store and basically take the information into it and use a semantic search or use something like that to be able to get the information, but that takes a lot of coding, that takes a lot of work. With this, you literally just go into Claude free of charge, drop a document in, and there we go. It goes through an entire outline, all based on the information you've given it. And again, if we maybe go here to write the introduction, and what this is going to do is write it, and then we can then have it write in a different style, write it directly for Middlesbrough fans, write it for people who don't like football, and you can get it to do this, and it's always going to be accurate. And that to me is extremely useful because you look here, this is just an introduction, maybe a little bit too long for a blog post introduction, and probably gives a little bit too much information, I think, for an introduction to it. You want to get the person who's reading to read a lot more, but it's still a useful introduction to it. If we maybe then get it, so again, this here is trying to aim at a different group of people. Don't there be too much use writing a blog post for non-football fans, but it's still useful because it's taking a different angle at it. So think about how you can then take information that is basic information, which is just for example, a study. Drop that into here and you can write about that and aim at a specific group of people and try and pull that information out in an easy to understand way, which is what we're going to do next. But if you take a look at this is taking the information, it's giving accurate up-to-date information, which is just taken from Wikipedia, very easy. And again, it is really, really useful because it can do a lot of different things. If you want to pull some statistics out in here, so what information in the document about attendances. So think about what that's going to do. It's going to go through, see if it has information about attendances, which I think it does, but if it doesn't, it'll tell us that. And that's really useful because, again, you can pull out little bits of information and make it relevant. So again, it gives the information there, and that's accurate information in there. So think about what this can do for you. Think about how you can use this for anything that needs relevant, accurate, and up-to-date information. And you can do this without having to do any code. You just load up Claude and drop the document in and ask questions about it. So let's take something a bit more detailed. So I'm going to take a download of a PDF of a study, and we're going to use that, and we're going to see how accurate it is once it gets the really long documents in, because this is where Claude really shines. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a bigger file. This file here is of a study that took place and was released this week based on what happens when you train AI models on outputs from other AI models, and the degradation in quality that happens once you do that a number of times. So that is really interesting because a lot of new models, so if you take a look at the models that were released open source recently, were trained on ChatGPT data. So ChatGPT output a lot of data, they train the models on it, and they seem to give good quality outputs. But what this finds is after 5 times, it gets very weird and the outputs start getting more and more strange. And that's really interesting. But what happens when these stories are released in the press, and a lot of people will have tried to generate information off the stories released in the press, is that suddenly they have a bit of a twist to it. They're twisted a little. You don't get the full context of what was said in the study itself. So what this can do is it can help you take that information and get it directly from the source and write your own outputs based on the source, or just understand it based on the source as well. Now, that's really good for SEO because what you're able to do is maybe pick up on points that the other stories missed. And you're able to also do that. Say if you take some information from offline, you have a book somewhere that you want to write information from, scan that in. Takes a little bit of time, but certainly not as long as trying to type it up. Scan it in and start putting that information online, and you'll suddenly get unique information. You can even take PDFs online that are from public domain sources that maybe aren't used that often in news stories. You take studies that people haven't started to write about yet and try and get ahead of the game. And Claude will help you do that, and that will help you with your SEO. Because if you're the first source out there writing about something unique, Google has no choice but to rank you because no one else is talking about it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to ask, I've spelled that wrong, so we'll have to see if it understands the misspelling, and that is something that's quite always worthwhile checking with AI, because sometimes it can actually pick up even if you misspell things, and that's really useful. I'm going to pretend that I did that on purpose. Obviously I didn't, but yeah, it understood what I was asking. Even though I misspelled it, it knew what I was asking about. And if you take a look here, this is exactly right. And what it's doing here is it's taking the bullet points of what was found in there. Now, it's still quite complex if you're not somebody who understands AI. So what we want to do is ask it, so now what we're going to do is simplify it and try and get it down to a level that maybe people can understand, even if they don't fully understand what AI is. And that is something that's really useful, because one of the biggest problems with people trying to understand studies, firstly the length, but secondly the complexity of the language, because it's written for an audience of very educated people. So again, it's now explaining it here. It's very, maybe a bit too simplified, but still, that is the way of explaining it to somebody who doesn't understand AI. Then what we can do is maybe, I like this. I don't know how good this is within Claude, but I like to use this on ChatGPT. So using concrete language is using real world things to explain abstract concepts. We're trying to make it feel real. It's a really good way of being able to get outputs that are able to be understood by a lot of different people. So if you're struggling to get outputs that are simplified enough in terms of language or are understandable enough in terms of language, using concrete language is a great way to be able to get that information into words, especially abstract concepts, into words that people can understand. When I say abstract concepts, I mean things that maybe you wouldn't see in the real world, things that are kind of in your mind more than in reality. So it's a way of being able to get people to touch, see, and feel the concepts that you're trying to explain to them. Works with all the ChatGPT. I don't know how well it's going to work in Claude, because again, Claude is very different in terms of the way that it's been trained, the way that it works. Again, if you take a look at these outputs here, I do think that ChatGPT does have better outputs, but it would never be able to take what we've done here and be able to put that into these sort of words. So again, yeah, so it gives some concrete language. It's explained the difference between having just fake data, so fake information, and real information, and what that does. So again, this is putting it into this here. It is explaining it in very simple language. Now we ask it to then write a blog post based on this. And the idea here is you're able to then take something, simplify it down, and then create information based on it. And if you're trying to write a lot of blog posts based on a subject, you have a long book, you can generally get quite a lot of blog posts from it. Taking a textbook, for example, you can get a blog post for almost every single chapter that's explaining a different concept. And that will really help you putting different information out there. And what this has done here is took the example it came up with of cats and it's written an entire blog post based on it. And all I've done is put the study into there. And again, this is something that you could do if you wanted to write a Twitter thread about it, or a LinkedIn post about it, or a Facebook post about it, because this here, not long enough for a blog post, really. You could use it for that, but take a look at what it's come up with. It's come up with a very quick output that I can put onto LinkedIn straight away, and people will be able to use this and look at it and understand exactly what it is I'm talking about, whether they understand AI or whether they don't understand AI. And this, I think, is actually good. I would certainly say here that in terms of one of my issues with ChatGPT at the moment, in terms of using it for blog posts, is there's a lot of ChatGPT-isms that make it very, very obvious that I've used ChatGPT. Things like where it says, so buckle up as we take a deep dive into. That comes up so many times. I would never speak like that, and a lot of people I know would never speak like that. But when they use ChatGPT, that's how they speak. That's how ChatGPT thinks that a salesperson or a sales email or a persuasive sort of fun email would speak like. And this here, I look at this and I like it. I think it's a really good LinkedIn post. It's not a good blog post, but it's a very good LinkedIn post. And it's come from the full information that's been taken from the document. We can go one step further here and we can ask it, what we're asking it to do now is to go through the document and see what we haven't covered, because this is a long document and there may be a second or third story that can be taken from that document. So if you're thinking about a long document, a study, you might get the biggest takeaway first, and that could be your first news story. There could also be 2 or 3 other stories that are hidden within that document that wouldn't get used because they're not the most impressive or most interesting results, but they could give you a second or third story. So if we come up with a blog post based on a LinkedIn post or a Twitter post, you could come up with 5 or 6 from that study that would cover information that maybe the news stories aren't covering, because they might only be covering the big lower hanging fruit story out there. So if we take a look here, we haven't covered. So if you take a look, so the different types of models that are in there. So again, so GANs are generative adversarial networks. So what they will do is they'll have 2 different networks. The first one will be the generator. This will generate some pictures. The second one will be the discriminator that will assess whether the pictures are real or fake. And what it will do, it will generate pictures and it will throw over maybe 5 real, 5 fake, 2 real, 8 fake over to the discriminator, and that will try and sort out the fake from the real. Once it gets to the point where the discriminator can no longer tell a difference, that is when the training's finished, and that's when it can start producing more images that are so similar to the first ones that people can't tell the difference. So StyleGAN is probably the most famous one out there, which has all of the different headshots that you've probably seen out there. And they're different to the diffusion models, which will start off with a lot of noise, and it will take with the noise time after time after time until it gets to a point where it's a picture. It's no longer noise, it's an image. The Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, they all work that way. When you use Midjourney, you can see the difference as it's going from noise, 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 noise to more of a real photo until finally a fully real photo. So that would be interesting. The normalizing flows probably gets a little bit too technical, but there's certain audiences that might like that. And if you go on to the other ones here, there probably aren't ones that would be useful for an audience of more of a sort of a lay audience, or an audience of people that don't understand AI. So that's what's really good about stuff like this, is if you're writing for a very technical audience, these here are all great ones to write about, to go that further deep dive into the information. So think about any industry you could be in. You could write your stories out here that are the really basic stories that everyone would find interesting. And then you could also, if you've got a technical audience, write ones that are close to technical audience, where they are taking the more specific information that is not even slightly interesting to people that don't understand the industry, but is really interesting to them. And that's what these different ones here can give you, stories that would allow you to go that step further after the story that all the main news networks will write about. And then what you can do is maybe pick up some of that traffic afterwards when someone wants to look that little bit deeper into it. So this here goes through the ways you can use it and the ways that you're able to actually take a big document and get unbelievable outputs from it. And like I said here, ChatGPT isn't good for this. You can't take that big study and drop it into ChatGPT. You're either going to use far too many tokens if you're using it on the API side of things, or you're going to run out of space if you're using it directly through the ChatGPT interface. Yes, you can build your own model that uses LangChain and uses different ways of being able to do that. But I mean, why would you do that when this is right here and you can have it work in a couple of clicks? So let's compare some of this information to using ChatGPT or using Bard and see what the comparisons are like. So now what we're going to do is go through a comparison between the three platforms. Now, the reason that I'm not going to do a prompt into each one and have it respond to that prompt is very simply because my opinion is that all three, and then I think we'll throw Bing in there as well, we won't go through it, but Bing is, I think, the best one for browsing, but all three have a positive points and have negative points. And my opinion is that you would use all of them in different circumstances. Now, if you just want to use one platform, you don't want to go outside of any of these platforms and use the two of them together, then ChatGPT Plus, paying for this Plus version, is the best of the three. And the reason for that is that it can do everything to a good level. And it is not able to reach Claude in certain things, and those really, it's a context window is the real problem with that. But in terms of what it can do anything to a decent level. So 3.5, you've got unlimited usage, and it can pretty much write anything you need it to write as long as it doesn't have to reason very much or have to do anything too complex. In terms of getting content from a prompt or getting content from a little bit of information or writing a blog post section by section, 3 is more than capable of doing that. It's more than capable of doing it at a very good level. But if you need something a bit more, where it needs a bit more reasoning, it needs to be a bit more complex, then GPT-4 is the best of the best at the moment, and it is just getting better all the time. And my opinion is that GPT-4 for most things is more than good enough. The downside is the 25 messages every 3 hours, which if you're doing a lot of work, it just isn't going to be enough. But if you want to code, it can do it in there. If you wanted to update the SEO in an article, it's going to do it in there. If you want to put some information in and have it work out some good responses to it or some good ways of being able to take that information and turn it into something useful, it can do that for you. It's good at pretty much everything. It can do everything to a high level. Code Interpreter, in my opinion, is a real breakthrough. Whether it is a good idea to be able to get it to program and run programs is great. I'm not 100% sure, but it does have some limitations. It won't write something that will loop on an infinite loop, like a menu loop or like a game loop. It will write the code for you, but it won't test it. It won't call APIs because it's not allowed to. It's within a sandboxed area where it can only interact, run a script once and see if it works and give you an output from it. But in terms of being able to put data into it and get it to visualize that data, get it to turn that data into a script, it is really good. And you can get workable scripts from it where you can still see the output and then take it and use it. And that to me is absolutely a game-changing thing for anyone who wants to use it for coding. It only uses Python at the moment, but it's still really good at what it does. But then if you go to the plugins, this is the reason why I say, if you want to do anything, ChatGPT at some point will be able to do it, because these plugins here have grown from, 2 pages when we looked at it when it first came out, and it's now at 89 pages, I believe, or 86 pages worth of plugins that do all sorts of different things. So we're looking here, we've got a ticket AI, we've got Stack Overflow on here, we've got this Persona AI, if you go back to page 5, you've got SEO, you've got a rewriter. You go through this here, it pretty much has everything. I mean, it's got things from very useful things you could use for work to Lincoln Bot, where you're able to get, guides from Abraham Lincoln. It's a really, really good way of being able to do almost anything now. So if you want to be able to do anything, so if we go here, you're able to get stats on games, you're able to play a word AI game, you're able to get information on games, you're able to play checkers with it. This here in my opinion, is if you're using it for fun or for a purpose, it can pretty much do it. It has a massive amount of SEO ones, which can help you with SEO. It's got a massive amount of rewriters, content writers. It's got a massive amount of coders. It's got a chatbot builder. Again, I look on here, and my opinion is that this is able to do already a massive amount of things, which are all included within ChatGPT Plus. And it's only going to get better and better because more people are creating plugins to use in this app. So, in my opinion, this here is at a level now where you don't always need to go outside of a platform to be able to do it. So again, if you're looking at PDFs where you can't upload within it, you can write, you chat with the PDFs. You've got here your chat with PDF option on here. Like I said again though, the context window within OpenAI means that you're not going to be able to do what Claude can do, which is why I say here that ChatGPT for most things is great, but Claude, you've now got the option of being able to have a long chat with it or to upload documents to it that it will give you answers directly to. And as we've looked at here, that's incredibly powerful. That is where Claude shines. It isn't as good with reasoning. It isn't as good with code. Its content, in my opinion, isn't always great, but you could start here in Claude and get an outline of a document, an outline of a blog post based on the document that you've got, and get it to write the basic blog post. You can then go somewhere else and get it rewritten to work for you. You can either humanly rewrite it, you can pay a human to rewrite it, you can take it to ChatGPT or take it somewhere else, maybe one of the platforms that are out there like Phrase, like Jasper, like any of the ones that are out there at the moment. Get that to rewrite it into a style that you're happy with, and then we're good to go. We've got a great document based on factual, up-to-date information. In my opinion, though, in terms of the content, it isn't as good, but it is getting better. We saw that blog post earlier, which I don't think is good enough for a blog post. And we saw the blog post itself that was writing for the football side of things. The introduction was good. It is getting better all the time, but I still think that because it's a less mature platform, it isn't quite as good. And I don't know whether the fact that the human feedback on ChatGPT is what seemed to really take the content output to the next level. And if Claude is not going to do that, which I don't believe it's going to do, because of the constitutional AI doesn't seem to have that same sort of framework in place, I don't know if we'll ever reach the same level as ChatGPT will. But in terms of this is something that you want to use if you've got a massive document or you want to just use a document as the base for your content or for what you want to use. Claude is where I would use for that because it can take that like Aleph Alpha can, but it can also write based on it while still referring to an entire document of around about 75,000 words, which again is just unbelievable compared to what everything else is trying to do at the moment, trying to work around the lower context windows. We come to Bard, and Bard, in my opinion, is the weakest of the three, but it does still have some really unique benefits compared to the other two. Firstly, it has a connection to the internet. I personally would use Bing for the internet connection because Bard isn't as accurate when it reads documents, but just like Bing, it does allow you to check the sources. And I do like the fact that in Bard, you're able to get the three drafts, and usually one of the three is always correct. So if you want to get the information first, you're able to search for it in Bard, get the three outputs, take the best of the three, then go and get the sources. You could then put all of these in a document, pop that into Claude, and then get your outline for the document in Claude, and then go over to ChatGPT 4, get your blog post from ChatGPT 4, then go back to Bard, and it does allow you to get photos. So you can search for photos within it. It will give you the photos, and then what does that mean? You've then got your document with your photos that you can start to use as a blog post, as an email, as a post on social media. And all three of them work together and link together to be able to do that. And Bard is getting better. Its ability to code is getting better. Its ability to be able to reason seems pretty good compared to GPT 3.5, but it just isn't at the same level. In terms of the outputs. The outputs just aren't as good in terms of using it for creative purposes, but I do still think it's useful. And like I said, you take a look at all three here. If you have a situation where you have a long document and you want to take that long document and get maybe 6 blog posts from it, Claude will do that for you. It will do all the hard work there. If you want to be able to search online and get some information and get factual information, Bing or Bard is where you would go to for that. If you want to be able to code, you want to be able to write some really complex information or be able to simplify or understand it, then GPT-4 is there. If you want anything that's kind of out of the ordinary, chances are there's going to be a plugin that will allow you to do that on ChatGPT. So all of these are really good at what they do. All of these are really good at certain points. So when we're looking at what the best AI is, there isn't a best AI. There's a best AI for your use case. And depending on what you do will depend on which one you want to use. And it may be different ones at different times. It may be a combination of all three. But either way, don't get drawn into, as what always happens is you end up having a crowd of people that will say it has to be this one. This is my AI, for example. So when you had your phones, you had your Apple versus Samsung, your Apple versus Android, and you were in one of those two groups. With the computers, you had your Microsoft or Mac. You have your Sony or Microsoft. It all depends on. People always take a side and stick to that side. With AI, there's no point in doing that. All three of these ones here and the other ones that are out there as well have their own unique benefits. And by blocking one out and saying, well, do you know what, I'm sticking with Bing because Bing Chat is far better than Google. Google Bard has really useful things that it can do. And like I said, the fact that it gives you 3 outputs is great compared to when you're using Bing, where you get your 1 output. And what you may find when you get your 3 outputs, that all 3 between them have the full information that you need, which you can then take and use somewhere else to create your documents. So use all 3. If anybody's going to come into the comments and say that I didn't show Claude in a good light, I don't think it's as good as ChatGPT 4 in terms of the actual outputs that it gives, but it's getting better, and it can be used for that purpose. You can't use GPT-4 to analyze a 50,000 word document and give you the information you need from it accurately, and that, in my opinion, is where Claude is starting to shine through. And if that continues to grow, get to the point where it has even more words that it can use, it's going to be unstoppable. So that is where we are. I would love to know what you have to say about it. If you have been using Claude already as well and you have your feedback on it, please let me know what you think. If you have a different use case that I haven't covered in here, let me know. And if there's anything you'd like me to cover more in depth, again, let me know in the comments down below as well. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe and click the notification bell. I do come in with videos that go through things that you can do with AI, but also sometimes like this, we'll go to a deep dive on the information about the new services that are out there and how you can use AI in a useful way. And we do also cover some of the lesser known AIs as well. Like I said, we've covered Aleph Alpha. We've also covered details of how AI works as well. So if you like that, please do subscribe to the channel as well. And also, finally, please, we talk about AI, we talk about algorithms here. Please like the video, because that is going to get this out in the algorithm and more people come to the channel. The more people that are here, the more videos that I can take the time to do. Well, thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again next time.